thank you for delaying your evening refreshments for a little bit.
We'll play some music anyway.
We really appreciate it.
How are you, boys? A long day, wasn't it?
It's been a long couple of days, Tuffers. Absolutely, this match so far has not been a thing of beauty. However, it's leading into a fascinating fourth day with a lot of pressure on England. I mean, you have to be honest about this pitch. It should be dug up and carefully laid over some rocks somewhere in Antigua and classified as their 366th.
Beach.
What am I talking about? Beach.
Yes, beach.
Yes.
It's been a long day. It's been a long day. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah, it's not good for batting and not good for bowling. But apart from that,
it's
great.
not. And the thing is that if you're a defensively minded lower order batsman, then you actually are very difficult to dislodge. It's easier to get at a batsman who actually wants to play a shot or two and mistimes it, gets it wrong. But actually, if you are simply coming in that lower order to accompany someone like Bonner, who plays extraordinary innings today, 355 balls for 125, and you're just actually content barely to play a shot, you are very difficult to dislodge. And England today were without Mark Wood for much of the day too. He's got an elbow problem, which is a bit of a worry. And you've got to be honest and say the rest of it looked pretty mundane and pretty toothless. And before people start shouting about Anderson and Broad without a bit of difference, I'm not sure really. This pitch is so slow. It's doing absolutely nothing. That I'm not sure. I don't know. Jeff Thompson and his pomp would have got much out of it, frankly.
I do think that Aggers is maybe being slightly grumpier than usual. I would say that the beauty of Test cricket, I suppose, is that it takes all sorts. And yes, this has been an attritional day and really hard work. But England, they had the chance to get their feet up. They did
have some chances.
They dropped the catch on Bonner at 73. Zach Crawley at slip, a very, very catchable chance. And I do think that the opportunity was there for them to take all 10 wickets. So I'll try and cheer Aggers up.
No, I think that's fair. I think that is a fair comment. I just hate seeing pitches that are basically just graveyards for cricket, because they just don't do anybody any favours. And I'm afraid this is pretty much into that category. Now, England, of course, could very easily get bowled out tomorrow. I suspect if they are, it won't be down to the pitch. It'll be down to their own frailties and the skill of the West Indian bowlers. Let's be honest. But if England are bowled out tomorrow, then I think it'll be their own fault, as it were, rather than anything to do with the surface, which might deteriorate a little bit. We've seen one or two balls keep low, but it is so slow that generally batsmen can change their minds and just adjust.
Any hint of a bit of turn, Aggers?
No, I've had a little bit from Leach. I mean, honestly, Philip, I've not got the greatest of view from here to see that. Now, Dean at least has the luxury of a television monitor where he's sitting. But Jack, I'd be interested to see what you think about Jack. Well, it doesn't matter. I think you should think about Jack, because I think he's bowling rather flatter than I have done of late. Now, that could be a confidence thing after Australia and so on, but I just can't go back to you rolling over the West Indies at the Oval. I mean, you tossing it up a little bit and coming down and playing some shots. I'd just like to have seen them at least try and lure Bonner into playing a shot or two, or just give it that little bit of air. But he's bowling very flat at the moment.
Any sign of it breaking up at all from your superior view, Dino?
Well, I studied the live pictures as well as the TV pictures very, very closely. And no, to be quite honest with you, the pitch is not breaking up hardly at all. As Aggers said, there is actually a bit of turn, but it is such slow turn that the batsman can adjust quite comfortably and play Leach off the pitch. And actually, with you on the line, Tuffers, it would be very interesting to hear your thoughts on as a spinner, as a finger spinner, how you might counter that. Is it a case of trying to bowl a bit quicker? But obviously, the quicker you bowl, the less flight and dip and guile that you get. But obviously, then you might hurry the batsman a bit more. What would be
the
Tufnell way?
Well, it is tricky, because when you do see those slow kind of pitches, you think to yourself, it's just a natural reaction to think, oh crikey, I've got to push it through a little bit, and just the mere fact of you pushing it through and getting sort of more pace on the delivery, you do lose that sort of flight and guile, or fags and gin we used to call it. But you have got to sort of like occasionally sort of come out the bunker and just, as Daggers was saying, try to toss a few up, try to make something happen, try to lure the batsman. But no, I can understand it if it is that slow. I mean, I haven't seen much of the game. You do get lured into sort of bowling faster and faster, trying to get something off the wicket.
As far as the seamers were concerned.
You're reduced to trying things as well, because there is absolutely no movement at all off the pitch or in the air. I mean, it's quite interesting because there is a very strong crosswind here, always is at Antigua, which Kimo Roach actually used beautifully from the end that we're watching. He was able to get that ball to swing, and a little bit of reverse swing as well, I think, towards the end. But if you look at the dismissal of route, which was orthodox movement, I mean, he really used it well, but there just seemed to be nothing for England to try, and it was a bit of a sorry sight to see Craig Overton, bless him. He did try ever. I mean, he's bowled 32 overs. Chris Woakes has bowled 30 overs. Ben Stokes not supposed to be bowling very much. He's bowled 28 overs because Wood was off. But to see Craig Overton try to bounce out the batsmen, especially the tail enders when they first came in with all the men back on the boundary, was a bit depressing, if I'm honest.
I was watching the live text as well as kind of watching the pictures and focusing on everything else that was going on this evening, Tuffers, and a few people were saying, well, why hasn't Saqib Mahmood been given a chance? Why isn't Matt Parkinson been given a chance? I mean, could anyone do better than the guys who are playing? Woakes and Overton. I mean, Woakes and Overton and Wood. I mean, doesn't half make you miss Broad and Anderson, doesn't it?
Well, yes, I know what you're saying there, really, and especially as you say with Wood with the elbow. I mean, on a flat pitch, that's when you do need someone to come steaming in and just try and shake something up a little bit. It would have been nice to see Parkinson. I mean, if you are bowling on a flat pitch, that little bit of deception, he's got a decent wrong and can bowl that sort of top spinner as well. That might be a remedy. But having said that, I think first test match of the tour, I think they kind of just looked at the team in this red ball reset, and I think that they had to stay loyal to a few of the lads, and I think that included Jack Leach. So perhaps in hindsight, looking back at it, the leggy or perhaps Mahmood, but I'm sure he's going to get a go in the second test.
I think that loyalty, Tuffers, that you talk about is a key point here, because Chris Woakes, now sort of seen as the de facto leader of the attack. He's the most experienced bowler that they've got here, and Jack Leach, who had been in Australia as well, and is seen as the senior spinner, the first choice spinner. So I think England very much going along those lines. But when you kind of stop and think about it a little bit in terms of what those guys have also been through this winter, and I think of Wood and Woakes in particular, because they obviously played their part in the T20 World Cup in the UAE as well, in a bubble out there, and moved on directly from there to Australia. Yes, we know it didn't go very well in Australia, but bowled a lot of overs, especially Mark Wood, and the sort of psychological and the intensity of Ashes cricket. It's not just physical, running up and bowling. It's adrenaline, putting all that thought and effort into it. And then at the end of all that, yes, I know they're professional cricketers and their job is to play cricket, but to get kind of thrown the ball without Broad and Anderson and just say, right, now you boys go out there and lead the attack and be at your very best. I'm not sure it's possible for them to be at their very best on this tour. So, a bit of a double whammy.
And they did all keep. They kept going today. To be fair, and we've all played on these really flat pitches that offer you nothing. And I'm standing back from being too critical, because they kept running in. They did try their best, and this pitch was offering nothing. Now, those bowlers will be looking at the batsman tomorrow and saying, "Don't you dare let us down here, because this is a flat pitch. You get in there tomorrow and you make it as hard work for those West Indies bowlers as it has been made for us. Get out there, bat. They have to bat all day tomorrow and into the next day as well, if they're to, make the game safe, but also to try and put some sort of pressure on the West Indies on the last afternoon. But the way that the scoring rate goes, even that might be quite tough. But their first objective, they've got to bat out tomorrow and beyond, and they've got to stand up and they've got to do it.
Yeah, and this England batting line-up, well, not necessarily this England batting line, as it's a little bit changed, it doesn't perform well under pressure, Ackers, does it? And they've got a cheeky little lead of 62. Kemar Roach, very, very skillful early on. if they're 40 for 3 or 40 for 4 again, they're in trouble.
Yeah, men round the bat and lots of atmosphere, and and just that lack of confidence that you have.
Yeah.
Alex Lees in his first Test match, Zach Crawley failed first innings. Dan Lawrence trying to find his way. If you take Johnny Bairstow's 140 out of the game, let alone out of England's first innings, take that out, and West Indies have absolutely totally dominated this match. In fact,
We should give credit. I mean, we need to definitely give credit to the West Indies batting today, Dean, don't we? And tell me about Nakru Mabona, because he's 33 years old. He only made his debut last year against Bangladesh, and he was, until quite recently, he was working as a labourer on a building site, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's
in
right.
America.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of these kind of wonderful tales of perseverance and resilience. Jamaican batsman who he actually made his T20 debut, played international cricket in 2011, so over 10 years ago, but fell out of favour in the Jamaican setup. Moved across, played a bit of cricket for the Leeward Islands, then didn't go so well after I think 3 years there. Moved over to the States, was working and living over there. He and his brother both playing in the Houston Premier League, playing for the Houston Stallions, I believe they're called. Pamal actually also played for the Somerset Cavaliers over there, so playing some cricket in America. And then he said, he decided that he wanted to give, elite cricket another go, and returned to the Caribbean. Went back to Jamaica, gave himself a chance via white ball cricket, got into the one-day team first, and then his opportunities to play for the West Indies came about just through a lot of senior players deciding not to tour during the pandemic, and he played in Bangladesh. He'd scored, I think, over 500 runs in the domestic tournament in 2020, which gave him his chance. And then, since he's made his debut, he really hasn't looked back, averaging over 45 now in Test cricket across 10 matches, 200s. Those are the numbers of a genuine Test match batsman. And he might not, be the most flamboyant of players, but boy does he have the concentration and the patience that really are great assets of the 5-day game.
can I say, Dean, if you ever go on Celebrity Mastermind, you must have Nakru Mabona as your specialist subject. That was remarkable knowledge.
Yeah, good preparation, that thing.
This is why I asked Dean the question and not either of you two. I knew that you would know.
But guys, it does just show perhaps someone who isn't going to go and chase it a wide away swinging half volley and nick at the first slip. You know what I mean? He's fallen out of it, and he's not going to give his wicket away.
Well, let's hear from Nakru Mabona speaking to Joe Wilson.
Nakru, these are nice questions to be able to ask. How did that feel? Can you put it in words when you got to 100?
Well, it was very emotional for sure. Cool bumps, take all my body all over. Getting some runs against England is always a good feeling, especially a team under pressure, and it's a good feeling.
Can you give us an idea throughout the last 10 years or so in Nkrumah? Were there times when you genuinely thought maybe cricket wasn't a profession for you? Did you come close to actually giving it all up?
Sometimes, over the last 10 years, it's been ups and downs for me. But I always keep the faith, keep believing, and finally it's paid off.
In terms of the bowlers you were facing here today, of course there's no Broad and no Anderson. Mark Wood was off for a lot of the match. How did you feel they were a challenge for you today, the England bowlers?
I thought they were very disciplined. They used the wind pretty well. They asked a lot of questions throughout the innings. As I said before, they're very disciplined.
Good position for West Indies to win the match now, yeah?
Yeah, we have a fighting chance. It's important for us to bat at least an hour tomorrow morning and try to put some pressure on the English batsmen.
Just one thing, I've always wanted to ask you, Nkrumah, your name, does it come from Kwame Nkrumah? Is that what it goes back to?
I'm not sure.
You should look him up, he was an important guy.
Okay, no problem.
Well batted.
Well, let's hear from the England interim coach, Paul Collingwood. He's been talking to Joe Wilson.
Well, I know it's a lifeless wicket and I know it's a long hot day in the field on tour again, but you would have wanted more from your bowling attack today. Would I be right?
Absolutely not. I thought today was probably one of the best efforts I've seen in an England shirt in Test cricket. To go for 170 runs and 5 wickets on that today is a pretty good effort, especially backing that up from 2 sessions in the field yesterday. I thought the fitness levels that the guys showed, their attitude in the field was exceptional. It was tough, hard work out there. It's a placid pitch, it's docile pitch. I think all of us expected it to break up a lot more than it has done and start turning. Sometimes you can look at the scoreboard and see you haven't bowled them out, but I thought the attitude was superb today.
I mean, people will look at the scoreboard back home, I suppose, Paul, and look at West Indies having a decent lead and think that was a failure from England's bowling attack. You would disagree?
Well, I think if you know anything about cricket, then you'll realise how that pitch is played and how soft, when that ball goes soft, that it's not doing much. And I think you've seen all the way throughout the day the efforts of the bowlers to put in right to the last ball there. Of course, it's disappointing not to bowl them out. But you can't fault the efforts.
Can I ask about Ben Stokes? I mean, when he spoke to us on Friday, I think what he said was he wasn't sure if he would be able to play his full role in this Test match. Look, he went over and above his full role, didn't he, in bowling today? Are you concerned about that at all? I guess you're proud of him as well.
It's fair to say that he declared himself fit to bowl in his first innings. Yeah,
I think we saw that. Yeah.
I think none of us were expecting that many overs out of him. Obviously, we had to be pretty cautious with the approach, but Ben being Ben, he went out there, felt great, and he's done everything so far in this tour to get himself fit. His attitude's been absolutely superb, and he's shown today what kind of a warrior he is.
Just finally, very quickly from me on Mark Wood. So you are assessing him overnight. Is it a fresh injury, or something that you suggested he carried into this match? Is that right?
No, it's a fresh one. So it's going to be looked at overnight, and hopefully he's going to be fine for the second innings.
Well, that was Paul Collingwood talking to Joe Wilson. One of the best efforts I've seen in an England shirt. Discuss, Phil Tufnell.
Well, I mean, I know where he's coming from. He's going to go out there and say exactly what he just said, isn't he? I mean, it is a placid pitch, and as Agger's mentioned earlier on, we've all been there, it can be tough. But having said that, and also you lose your main strike bowler as well, but having said that, the odd catch dropped here, the odd fielding mistake there, they'll sit back there and sort of say to themselves, well, perhaps we weren't at the top of our game, but having said that, I do know what he means. I mean, sometimes you come across, a placid pitch like that, and guys who would just want to hang around and eke out the runs and what have you. It can be tricky to dislodge them and what have you. But exactly what I would have expected from Paul Collingwood to say, really.
Yeah, it's quite spiky. It was quite prickly. Poor old Joe's cowering behind me, asking the question. I think to be fair, I mean, apart from that bit about the best effort, but I think that in general, what he said was more or less what we have said here. I think that it's an incredibly slow pitch. It's not doing anybody any favours, bowlers or batsmen. They did try hard. They kept going all day. They didn't have Mark Wood's pace. They did try different things. I don't like seeing a sort of a bouncer attack at tail enders when they first come in. You just try and bowl them out. I don't think that was the wiser things. If you want to be really technical, I think there were occasions yesterday when Joe Root had some of the bowlers the wrong end. I think he had Wokes and Leach on the wrong end in the afternoon. But I think there are things you could look at during a day. But where I will agree, and I think what we have also said, is they did keep running in. However, I would like to assess this attack more on a pitch in which there is actually the chance for the batsman to play some shots, because on this pitch there isn't. You try and play shots on it, you're going to get out. You just run up, you bowl straight, you bowl a length, you're not going to go for many runs. I would like to see them more on a pitch, a more typical Test pitch, shall we say, and see if they have got something so they get good batsmen out in those circumstances.
I also think that Paul Collingwood's comments maybe have something to do as well with the fact that on the odd occasion when England did think that they'd made a breakthrough, I think Ben Stokes, for example, had a sort of classic celeb appeal where he thought he had an LBW and the umpire gave it, and England, the relief and the joy on the England players' faces was clearly palpable, only to get the review come up and realise it had inside edged it, and they had to continue. And
a couple of umpires' calls too, weren't there?
A couple of umpires' calls, and it could have been so easy, I think, in those moments for the heads to go down And just to think that not only are the bats, the broad bats, kind of nullifying you, but also, you know, luck's against you, the world's against you, the umpire's against you. But they didn't. They carried on. They kept going, and so Collie was right to praise that.
They didn't start off great with the new ball, though, did they, guys?
Certainly not in early on, the first new ball. I mean, I think the one disappointing thing about today overall was that it did begin well for England. They got the wicket there to get, got Jason Holder out very quickly. Yeah. That set things up then for that second new ball. They had that wicket, if you like. De Silva played really well. I mean, he's certainly no mug with the bat. He's the wicket keeper, of course. So he hung around. He put 73 on with Bonner. But if you want to follow the script, it actually started very well for England today. You know, Holder gone, new ball. Let's get that new ball taken. But it was just completely blunted. But no, they were pretty poor with the first new ball, I must say. You really see Craig Brathwaite smacking it about. They were 83 for no wicket at the 20th over. So they just got their lengths. They got their lengths wrong in that. Far too many boundary balls, and then they just settle into that line and length. And I say, if you look at the runs they've scored, 170 runs today in 90 overs. So that's, you know, and with one fella getting 120 odd. So they did restrict, but this is not a difficult pitch to restrict batting on. It's a strangling pitch, and if you are a defensively minded batsman, you are that number 7, 8, 9 or whatever, batting with a proper batsman, and you are just trying to defend, you are very difficult to dislodge in these circumstances.
So I was just going to say, because what's it like over there? What's the attitude like over there with this sort of like new look, sort of fresh England team at the moment? Is there a good buzz about the guys?
Well, they've looked lively in the field, you know, and there's been a big effort. I mean, Dean was in Australia with us. The opportunity to speak to players and so on was almost zero on the course of that Ashes tour, and actually to come here a couple of days before the match and so on, and actually start talking to team players again, people you hadn't seen for months. Well, you've seen them on the middle, but you couldn't talk to them. You know,
well, I heard you did an interview with Joe Root with just one microphone, Aggers. I was hearing from
I know, for the first time about 2 years. You know, you can actually have a conversation with people. So from that perspective, it's been great. It's been wonderful to have spectators here, travelling supporters. The Barmy Army man's brought his trumpet with him. We've heard plenty of that over the last couple of days. But, you know, to see Johnny Bairstow walking off with his 140 and actually being able to show his bat to the crowd. I mean, it is like a home game here for England, and it will be in Barbados too. They'll be swarming with England supporters who have been dying themselves to get out and actually travel a bit and watch some cricket. So, yeah, I mean, the atmosphere, it's still going on now. It's almost dark, as you can probably hear it in the background. But, you know, there is a really good atmosphere to it, and it's great to have live sport, live spectators, and so on. But there will always be, in the background to this tour, Broad and Anderson, and it'll keep coming back to that. And whether or not England should have picked the best side, which I think what most of us would think that you should do, and I think that they should have learnt that from the last 12 months. Rest, rotation, all that stuff, I don't think does anybody any favours, and the players don't like it, and it's not right. You have to have integrity in selection. You have to believe in the selection process as players, and I don't like it when you leave best players out, players who should be in the side out. That doesn't seem right. So that will always be, I think, a backdrop to this series, and whether or not those two will come back.
Well, I just wonder, actually, we've only got a minute or two left, and I just really want to get your view on this, Dean, whether actually maybe Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson are sitting at home at the moment thinking, actually, I'm not sorry to not be putting my back into trying to bowl on this wicket.
Well, I know for a fact that that's not true. I can tell you now that at least one of those two I've been in touch with who absolutely wishes he was out here, you know, bending his back and trying to take wickets and win games for England. You know, that's what he's dedicated his career and his life to doing, and you know, until such time as you know, he's going to move on and do something else. You know, that's what he wants to do. So I know that obviously there's an element of senior pro smartness about certain situations at times, but I think when you're playing for England, as these guys out there have done over the last day or two, you just try your very best. You know, it doesn't matter how flat the pitch is or what's working against you. You just try your very best to try and get some success for your team and your country. And it's been tough, but there's another day tomorrow.
Yeah. Plus, Ellie, it's always good to tour the Caribbean. You don't want to sit at home.
that is true. Yeah. So quick final word then about how things are going to go in the next 2 days. 2 more days to go, and then off to Barbados, where, as you say, England will be hoping for a better pitch. And we're not just whinging about the pitch. We should say this, shouldn't we? Because every time you talk about the pitch, Jonathan, people will say, "Oh, it's sour grapes," in the same way that we talked about the pitches in India last year, which were not helpful to anybody either.
Well, I think it's got to be honest. Say what you see, and it was because of the pitch that England actually were able to get away with it, with Bairstow rebuilding the innings. That helped, and West Indies made it very difficult here. But it should be in no way, I think, responsible for the way that England bat tomorrow. If they bat poorly, that is through their own frailties.
Yeah, big day for England tomorrow, Ellie. Big day. Got to stand up and get out of here and go to Barbados 0-0.